Hi, I'm Katie Todd, and today's episode is about when the child within us is dominating our lives. I've talked about in the archetypes and in personality traits and types that we all have a child type or a child archetype within us. It's amazing how much time the adults of this world are spending in their child. Now, how do I know when I'm in my child? Let me give you a clue. Have you ever said, I'm overwhelmed, I just can't cope, it's too much for me, or that is so unfair, or why do people hurt me like that, or why are they attacking me like that? Have you ever blamed other people for where you are and blamed fairly strongly about things? Have you ever been stubborn and intransigent and unable to move at all, inflexible, and you're wondering yourself, why am I being like this? I'm so rigid. I'm being so black and white, and you're as stubborn as anything. That they are all things that are saying we are in our child. Now, our child will come up when we're stressed. Our child will dominate when we're feeling inadequate, when we're not feeling enough, when we're not loving ourselves and nurturing ourselves well enough. And in this day and age, let's face it, we all get stressed and we all push ourselves, and not all of us are very good at nurturing ourselves at times. I want to give you a fantastic example of how the child can dominate our choices and our reactions in life. I have a client who told me this story the other day about her husband. And she said, my daughter is being offered to go on a trip with the school. It's fantastic. Now, we live in Australia. My client and I are in Australia. And the daughter had been offered a trip to go around England, and they were going to go to Shakespeare's house. It was a literary tour for the literature students, and she was going to go with her peers. Now, money was no object for this family. How fortunate. They could afford it. However, the husband had said an absolute flat no. She is not going. She cannot go. Now, the wife was very upset about this. For her, it was very, very important, and it was an amazing opportunity. And how hard was it going to be for the daughter to have to stay at school knowing all her friends had gone off and had this amazing experience? She tried to talk to her husband about it many times. And he would come up with things like, well, we went as a family to England a couple of years ago, so she doesn't need to go then. We don't need to spend the money. She's been. I can't see the point. No, she's not going. And he was very, very stubborn and very, very inflexible about it. It had caused a great rift in the marriage, and the daughter had resigned herself to missing out. The wife was secretly feeling a little bit worried because the son was going to be offered a trip to Japan in the next year, and she knew the same argument would happen, and she was worried about what would happen. The father was also alienating himself from his children without realising it, because they knew that he could afford it, so they couldn't understand. It did not make sense why he was saying no. To his credit, the husband came along and saw me one day, and I said, I think this might be a topic that's worth exploring because you are alienating your wife and children here. One of the things I get to do with my clients when they come and sit with me is I get to find out what's conscious and what's unconscious. I believe our lives are like an iceberg. We're conscious of 1/9 and 8/9 we're completely unaware of, and that's dominating what we're choosing. And in there is the child. I asked him to close his eyes, put his hand here, and just breathe in, and just feel where he was coming from as he said, no, you can't have that. I said, what can you feel as you're saying, no, you can't go on the trip? And he said, I'm feeling very stubborn, and very rigid, and very tough. And I go, okay. Keep breathing, and the point of the breathing is get out of your head, get into the unconscious and find out what's really choosing it. And I said, how old do you feel? Just pick a number out of the air. He goes, oh, I'm 7. And I said, okay, tell me what was happening when you were 7. And straight away he said, my dad left us. And he started to cry, and there was gut-wrenching pain that came from him. And I said, so you feel like you're about 7 right now? He said, yes. And I said, and how do you, as a 7-year-old child, feel about your daughter going on a trip around England and Europe? And he said, it's not fair. I've just lost my dad. Why should she be allowed to go on a trip around the world? It's not fair. And then the pain came through again. As he opened his eyes, he was absolutely shocked. I had no idea, he said, that it was my 7-year-old child who was coming from this amazing place of crisis and trauma that was choosing and saying, no, she can't have it. It's like the Cinderella story. Some kids can go off to the ball in their new dresses, and the other one can stay home and scrub the stove and the floor as a servant. Our child, when we fall into our child, will not want our children to have more than we've had. The adult does, but the child doesn't. When he lost his dad, he never saw his father ever again. Now this man is in his 50s. He's never seen his father. The abandonment was profound. The pain was profound. So he found it hard to be generous when he had come from deprivation. The point of this story is, when you get really stubborn and really fixated and cross and won't, and you know you're being unreasonable and even a bit irrational, ask yourself, where is this really coming from? Because if it is your child, you are going to be perpetuating more conflict and pain. And if we could give to your child and give them their needs, help them, then you're able to be loving and generous with your family. And isn't that what we're all wanting to do?